Hello YouTubers and welcome back to Assetto Corsa. Had my little gush fest in the last video, lots of car watching, not a whole lot of me talking. I was definitely in love with this game, and I still am. So what we're going to be doing today is a little bit of driving school. I'm going to be talking about a couple different types of cars. I'm going to be racing, first and foremost, as you can see, I have the Abarth, the Fiat 500 Abarth. And that's just a slightly hopped up Fiat 500. So I'm going to be racing this today to express a couple different principles on racing. I'm going to go over some basic racing tactics and stuff like that, and just overall just enjoy the game and do a little bit of racing. Hopefully you find it informational and you find it fun to watch as well. So first and foremost, I've got, chill out there menus, the Fiat 500 Abarth. This is a fun little car. You may remember the commercial with Charlie Sheen racing around his house in it. But we can learn a couple of important things from the Fiat 500 here. It's a lower powered car, which is a great car to learn on. And I'm currently on a track that has... It's designed for track racing with cars. So it's very groomed, it's very smooth, it's got banked corners, and if you watch, on the track itself, there's actually grooves from where the most popular line to drive is. So as we come up to our first corner here, we can follow all these tracks inside, and then drift back out. Now, when you do that, as you can see here, when you swing outside like this, come into the corner, and then drift back out of the corner here. Not technically drifting in the sense that you made Fast and Furious slide all the corners, but when you start from the outside of a turn, cut to the inside, and then come back outside again, that is known as apexing a curve. Now, why do you apex? Here's an example of an apex here. I start outside, throughout the corner, I drift to the inside, and then I start drifting back out again on my exit until I'm back at the outside of the track. The reason you do this is if you think about the track being a channel, and your driving line, see now I'm distracted, and your driving line being an arc that goes through that, the radius of the turn, let's say the radius of the turn is, let's say the radius of the turn is 45. We'll just say meters. So the radius of the turn is 45 meters. So this arc is going to be following that 45 meter line. If you start on the outside, come to the inside, and then drift back out again, what you're effectively doing is increasing the size of the circle, or turning less. See, in a vehicle, that's important because it keeps your speed up so that you have an edge on your competition. As you may have noticed, I'm having trouble expressing this theory as I figured the steering out, but the steering in this game is very sensitive. I hope that is something that developers work on. I could really use it to be a little bit smoother, and you know, this is probably only conditional to using a gamepad like I am. I imagine with a racing wheel, as I did see, it's extremely smooth and very easy. So I can imagine it would be a lot more fun with a racing wheel. Now I have an excuse to buy a racing wheel. However, I don't have the funds to buy a racing wheel. Maybe with my tax return, I can go out and get myself a nice racing wheel. Who knows? 'Tis 2014 after all. So that's apexing a corner. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. That is one thing in terms of a smooth driving line. What you want to find is you want to not approach a corner and then go, oh, I need to be on the outside. Okay, I'm on the outside. Oh, now I've spun out. You want to make sure that you get there in a smooth fashion, that you cut it to the inside nice and smooth, and then on the exit of your turn here, you want to just slowly drift to the outside there. And that's a nice, clean corner. You want to use all of the track, is what that's called. Use all of the track whenever you corner. Also, in terms of tire squeal like you're hearing now, a little bit of complaining is actually a good thing. When it goes around the corner, you want to hear a little bit of complaining from the tires. Not enough to create smoke, and not enough to actually get that high-pitched, the high-pitched screech. You want a lower moan, in real life anyway. What that means is that you are literally at the limits of the grip of your tires. That means they're using every square centimeter of their surface area that's contacting the track to turn. A good way to gauge that in a video game, especially one like this, to see if you're sliding too much or just enough, is you want the note of the engine to increase the entire time through the corner and out. So I shifted there, but when I straighten out, here it just keeps accelerating. If I've slid a corner, you'll hear the engine note get higher, and then right when I straighten out, you hear it go, and that's you grabbing traction again. And that means you, even though your tires are spinning faster through the corner, you're actually losing speed, which is bad. So for instance here, hear that little stutter? You don't want it to do that, other than redlining on the second half of that. Now, so that's sliding corners, if you will. The main difference about all this is that we're in a front-wheel drive car. We're also in a car that doesn't weigh a whole lot. While that does have benefits for handling, it does mean that I carry momentum into a corner and I don't have the weight to stay on the track, so I actually end up sliding a little bit easier. The only benefit to that is I have a front-wheel drive car, which means whenever you get into trouble like this, the best thing you can do is get back on the gas and point the nose of your car in the direction you want to go. That's because your car is being pulled from the front and your rear end will fall into line. In a rear-wheel drive car, if you slam on the gas as soon as you start to lose control, you will only make matters worse for yourself. So, a front-wheel drive car is pretty forgiving in that aspect. Even downshifting into a corner, what that could do is actually pop your back end out, help you get around a corner, if it's a really particularly tight one. So if you get into trouble in a front-wheel drive car, staying on the gas is your best friend. Now, getting around a track, being on the gas is always going to be your friend, obviously, because you want to go forward. That sounds strange to say. But whenever you're approaching a corner, you want to do all of your braking and all of your downshifting before you enter the corner. Especially in a rear-wheel drive car, especially in a car that's been tuned for racing. What happens is every time you shift, that makes your wheels stutter. And if you're currently trying to turn, and you make your rear wheel stutter, all that's going to do is send your back end all the way around to where your front end is. And that just ruins your weekend. So the idea is when you're coming up to a corner like this, and you're carrying a little bit of speed, brake hard, get down to the gear that you want. That was a horrible example. And then begin turning. I carried too much speed into that corner. That was my big problem. So let's test the method again. I've been talking, so I'm not paying as much attention. Also, you want to wait as late as you can. It's called late braking. Wait as late as you can before you start braking, so that you can maximize all of your power that's being transmitted to the track. So, as I go through the corner, I am accelerating as I turn. That's a foreign concept to a lot of people. I know for some of you that might be common sense, and that's great. You know about cornering in a racing setting. This is also why people run into trouble when driving in the snow. This is fresh in my mind because I'm Chicago-based, and we just got, what, 15 inches of snow? When driving in the snow, you want to be on the gas, not pressing hard, but you want to make sure that your wheels are spinning, because that keeps you heading in a specific direction. If you hit the brakes, your wheels lock up, you spin out. If you hit the gas too much, your wheels spin out, your wheels spin too quickly, and you spin out. But if you stay on the gas, so I'm using an Xbox controller. It's about modulating the gas and the brake here, so you're not constantly floored. You're feathering the gas and easing into it, and then easing into the brakes so that you don't lock up your brakes. Regardless of how hard I try, I still have a tendency to lock up the brakes in this game, so therefore I'm using ABS. I am not using traction control, however. So as you can see in this little car, as soon as you start getting bent out of shape, you can just floor it, and it'll sort itself out for the most part. Four-wheel drive cars are similar. The issue you get with them is a four-wheel drift, which is a little different and a little harder to overcome. The car just kind of slides straight sideways, as opposed to the back end coming around, the car just kind of scoots like it's on a very slick surface. So, late brake, get it down to the gear I want, accelerate. And the faster you can modulate between braking and gas is better. You want to do as few corrections as possible, because every time you turn that wheel, you're slowing yourself down. So the biggest thing about this is about being smooth and consistent. That way, if you find that your times on around the track are not what you want them to be, you can make small corrections. They'll have small effects on your time, but you can see which is most effective. It could be something as simple as brake a little later when entering a turn. Or maybe you're braking too late, spending too much time sliding through the corner, and not enough time getting back on the gas to get through a corner. These are all possible scenarios. So, remember, brake first, then turn. Also downshift first and then turn. Then get on the gas for the corner. Now you can let off the gas for your corner, but it's a good idea to have a little bit of input to keep yourself going. So, this game is very realistic and pretty unforgiving. Especially in a lower horsepower vehicle such as this. I know this is the special release of the Abarth, but the Fiat 500 to begin with hardly has 100 horsepower. The Abarth has 120. So you're not gaining a whole lot extra. But in a car of that size, sure, you're gaining a little extra. It does a little bit better at highway speeds. You can get it up to about 110 miles an hour. Good for it. It's good fun. It's mostly about acceleration. It's a hot hatch, is what it's considered. It's a hot hatchback. See, there you go. No damage on a lap, so I just got awarded the Clean Drive Award. Hooray! So, this is driving in a front-wheel drive car with lower horsepower. Getting into a corner, troubleshooting, get on the gas once you start getting a little out of sorts. You basically just have to point the front end of your car in the direction that you want to go, hit the gas, and the rest of your car will kind of follow. It's like pulling a sled, is a good way to think about it. Now, you can pull hard enough in a corner to kick the back end out, yes. In this kind of car, I don't think it has the weight nor the power to really bust the back end out. You can get a little complaining from the rear wheels. I'm trying to get some here, but for the most part, it stays pretty well in line. Okay? So this is covering a front-wheel drive car. I'm already getting up there in my time, so what I may do here, I'm going to swap cars. I'm going to swap to something with a little bit more power. I might be able to express another. Sounds like a diesel, doesn't it? Sounds like a little diesel. It's such a tiny engine. Anyway, I'll see you guys in a second. Alrighty, welcome back to the track in the very vehicle that we were looking at inside the easy showroom. Look at those nostrils. Ooh. Okay, so this is a BMW. This is an M3, a newer M3. Oh, look, got a little heads-up display and stuff. That's nice. Can I look around with my mouse? Nope, I can move my mouse around. Okay, so this is a rear-wheel drive car. I was looking around. I don't think we have any four-wheel drive cars in the showroom presently. I mean, they only have released a couple of vehicles. So, same track, a little bit more horsepower in the vehicle. So, just to express a couple different thoughts here. Trying to be smooth here. The difference with this vehicle is you can kick the back end out while you're going through corners, and sometimes I can aid with a little bit of traction. Now that's not called drifting, that's called power sliding. Drifting is something entirely different. Also, you're not going to see me drift on this channel probably. I really am not a fan. I'm not a fan of drifting. So, doing a power slide is a strange balance. It's where the back wheels are spinning forward faster than the car is going. Yes. But just barely. Your car is just past tracking straight. Man, it's going to be hard to do in this car, too. It's so sensitive. But, what it does is you are accelerating through the corner. Your car typically just doesn't weigh enough, and it can't put the power down on the track. So, an issue that the a Barth has also is that it doesn't have a whole lot of downforce. I mean, there's no real call for it because it's not that fast. But a car like this has decent downforce. Problem is, as much as people preach downforce, it doesn't really kick in until you're going at least like 120, 130 miles an hour. That's why an Indy car is basically a giant wing. It's to keep the thing glued to the track because it doesn't have the weight to do it. But its cruising speed is about 120. I mean, anywhere between 90 and 120. And that's what keeps them on the track and keeps them tracking straight. Oh man, the steering is sensitive. Alright, I'm swapping views. I'm getting distracted by the hands. So a car like this will have downforce. There's a little lip on the trunk that does provide a little extra downforce. So as you can see, in this car, when you start getting bent out of shape in the corners, and that back end starts kicking out, you want to get off the gas. See, there's a power slide. But I didn't recover very well out of it, but that was a power slide. Hey, guys, proof of concept. The same applies for apexing corners in this car. I mean, it's every car you want it to do that. But the problem is if you start kicking the back end out in a corner, in a car like this, in a rear-wheel drive car with a lot of power also, mind you, you want to modulate the gas. You want to let off. You want to push back on just a little bit. You're waiting for the back wheels to pretty much just catch a little bit of traction so that you can help it go straight. You can probably hear me feathering the gas there too. And there. Whoa. I'm actually doing that with my finger. And what you're trying to do is find the speed at which the ground is passing and match that with the rotation of your wheels. Come on, buddy. So that you can gain traction and start driving straight again. This game's a lot of fun to play without traction control, but it makes me look like I've never done this before. But I love that about this. Also, naturally, with a faster car and a heavier car, you're going to have to go a little bit slower through the corners, and you need to brake earlier. That goes without saying. So, brake late still, but brake late for each car is going to be different. I just went completely through that. Whereas, obviously, with the Fiat 500, I was able to stop within that time frame. So, the differences basically are troubleshooting in vehicles like this. And learning how to take a corner, how to recover from a skid, how to recover from a power slide appropriately, because it's basically a controlled skid. It's a controlled loss of control. And if you overcorrect, like I am very expertly, I'm showing you what not to do. I mean, that's what it is. If the steering weren't quite so sensitive in this, I think I'd be able to recover just a little bit better. But because it jerks from left to right, it strikes me as racing wheel settings that they just applied to a gamepad. And I just don't think it's the correct settings. Anyway, I'll stop complaining about that. You can see it in here too. It's just one side and then immediately the other. I'm barely touching the stick in order to get it to move that really light amount, and if you pop the tires loose, when you're going into a corner, if you turn too hard and the tires bust loose, they will be loose for the rest of the corner, for the most part. If you can go in nice and smooth, you can usually end up pushing it a little bit harder without busting your rear end out, which I prefer, personally. Once again, this car has paddle shifters as opposed to the Abarth had a stick shift. So paddle shifters, as I said, in my initial video, it was kind of hard to hear because the sound of the car was up so loud because I was legouching. There you go. There's a power slide. Kind of a drift. Ah, no! I hate drifting. But, in case you didn't catch it, a paddle shifter is basically just an automatic gearbox with a little button that you press that says, hey, switch up now. A lot of paddle shifters, cars that have paddle shifters, you still have the stick in the center console that dictates whether or not you're going to put it in drive, put it in reverse, and then usually there's either... Also, there's usually a gate that you push the stick into, or a button that you press that... Come on, buddy. That lets you know that you want it to be in paddle shift mode. There's a variation on that, which is called a sport shift, which a lot of Audis have. I've seen a couple Mercedes also have that. I think a couple Fords also utilize that as well. And that's also where the stick shift in the center, the automatic gear shift, you put it in a drive, and then when you... Stop doing that, man. When you put it into drive, there's a little gate that you can push to, like, the right, typically, and you'll see a plus above it and a minus down below it, and when you want it to shift, you just bump that forward. And then, when you want it to downshift, you bump it backwards. What that does is just overrides the computer chip inside the car that tells your vehicle when to shift automatically. Actually, I believe that... interestingly enough, I think the Audi Q5 and Q7, their SUVs, I think they had them in there, which is just odd. I don't know how many people are street racing their Audi SUVs. I mean, they're quick for an SUV, I suppose. But they're not amazing. Either way. Yeah, I think I'm just going to call this the Farrington Empire. Car time with Farrington Empire. Talking bitch about cars, what you think is great. If you don't know a whole lot about cars and you want to watch some programming that's going to be informational yet entertaining, if you haven't, obviously check out the BBC version of Top Gear with James May and Jeremy Clarkson and Richard Hammond. My brain can work because I'm still trying to drive. It's a phenomenal car show. I have a lot of people who are not car people who love watching that show because they'll tell you about cars, they'll tell you why they work, why they don't work. Even when they're talking jargon about the performance specs of a vehicle, they present it in such a way that is easily digestible, which is it's refreshing and fun to see. So, yeah, go ahead and check that out. It's on Netflix. I do know that. You can get the first couple of seasons when it's just Jezza by himself, which is Jeremy Clarkson. That's what he goes by. Jezza is his nickname. It's a lot of fun. His car reviews are great. He's a little dramatic, which is always fun. This is the fastest car in the world. I drove it and my face nearly got ripped off as I ran around the first corner. He loves hot hatchbacks. He's this giant man. He's about 6'4", which is big compared to someone. Well, no, he's 6'6", actually. And he loves hot hatchbacks. He loves cramming himself in these little tiny cars like the Fiat Abarth and just racing around a track. He loves the Ford Focus, and he loved the Renault Clio, which is a fun little car. I have a feeling that'll end up being in this game. It was probably the most popular Renault that's ever been made. Other than that, Renault is not a very sought-after company. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a hatchback division in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if you see some Clios start coming in. I'm excited to see what other vehicles they start rolling out. So far, a lot of European cars. It's Italian developers, I can tell by the names and so forth, so people other than the folks in the US don't have that much of an affinity for American cars. The Brits don't necessarily like the Fords and the Chevys. They're too big, they're too loud, and they're too abrasive, and as most of them will say, they also don't corner. So there's something fun about taking a vet and just sliding it around a corner, though. Oh! Alright, well, with that, I'll cue this up. Alright, so to recap, we just generally went over some properties of general racing. We laughed, we cried, we shared information about cars and how they handle. We're going to watch me consistently fail in this BMW. I'm going to make BMW owners cringe a bit. Yeah, at the end of the day, if this is something that you want to pursue and you want to look into racing games, just remember apex your corners. Take your time, learn the car. I don't know if you could tell, but I was being pretty light on the gas for the first couple laps in this. I really was. Brake way too early. How realistic this game always gets me. Always gets me. I forget English. I forget English when I drool over a game. But I hope this was interesting. If you like the car uploads, let me know. I'd love to chat about different vehicles, how they handle, do some comparisons, especially once I start getting more vehicles out. I usually have a tendency to kind of shy away from the exotics. I know that the M3 is kind of an exotic car in its own right. It's definitely for the social elite, but it's still accessible. It's not like the open-wheel dragsters and the Lotus Elise is even considered, I mean, in my opinion, a street car. It's not a Pagani Zonda, which is a lot of fun to drive, but you need to have a racing license in order to own one. And certain Ferraris that are also in this game, you need to have a racing license in order to own one. And if you want to, it's not street legal. So if you want to drive it, you have to call Ferrari, tell them that you've purchased a ticket for a track day at X track in X country. They will remove your car from storage. They will place it upon a truck, and they will meet you at the track and unpackage your car for you. During your lap day, you also have the Ferrari pit crew on call for your specific model of your car. A couple of dudes from Ferrari will just help you fix it if something goes wrong. That was a nice slide. That was the power slide I did. But that's not a car. I don't know. That's a car is something you can buy, drive to and from the shop, love, respect, and on the weekends take it out to a track where you really just get to beat the hell out of it like this. You know. Also, in my random disclaimer, don't try to apex corners in your neighborhood. People don't like it. Try not to use all the stuff that I've been telling you about, you know, on the freeway. Cops don't like it. If you're going to do this kind of thing, make sure that you reserve a track. I mean, it's pretty hard to do in the States, but there are autocross events where you can meet up. They'll have a track mapped out with cones. You can pay $60 and just take your car there and beat the hell out of it for a day. Doesn't matter what kind of car it is. You can take a Toyota Corolla. It's a front-wheel drive car. Practice some of the stuff I taught you here. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to just take your car out and just see what it'll do. Doesn't matter if it's slow. It's just fun because you don't get to drive like that normally. And typically, a lot of these races are done on like airport strips. So if you spin out or if you miss a corner, the worst come to worst, you hit a cone. So you get a little bit of orange on your car that you buff out. So, I mean, that's probably the worst. And you go through tires a little bit. So go with some fresh meats on your car and maybe just have those be your racing wheels. Ooh, getting fancy now. Either way, I've been rambling for far too long. And I'm tired of watching myself overshoot all these corners, all these really tight corners on this track. Either way, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed upload number 2 of Assetto Corsa. I hope it answered some questions that you probably didn't have, but I hope you learned a little bit of something. Check out BBC's Top Gear if you haven't. It's a wonderful little program. And until next time, I've been Farrington Empire. You've been absolutely fantastic. And we'll have some more high-octane fun next Thursday. We'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.